All right. Welcome to Study Skills for Success in Math class, the workshop brought to you by the Learning Center at Genesee Community College. All right, so what we're going to go over today is how to use textbooks, what to do in class and after class, understanding the fundamentals, calculator usage, how to do practice and how to practice math, study groups, study aids, online resources, and college resources. So in class, you want to participate actively in a math class. Raise your hand to try to answer questions that are asked by your professor. If they ask what the next step is, think about it, attempt to answer it. Don't shy away from answering a question. Professor's not going to hate you if you get the wrong answer. You are trying. If you get the wrong answer, it happens. If you get the correct answer, you're understanding the content. But do actively participate. Don't be afraid to ask questions yourself. If you are stuck at a step, raise your hand. When the professor is ready to answer the questions, they'll call on you, ask a question. If you want to wait till after class, meet up with the professor, write your question down in your notebook, meet up with your professor after class and say, can you answer this real quick? If it's going to take too much time, email them the question, but don't be afraid to ask questions. For some, math takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and for others, it's a little easier, but we all got to ask questions. Write down all the examples the professor goes over. If your professor is writing it on the board, you should be writing it down in your notebook. These are the most important examples. If the professor is going over it, they're going to put it on an exam. So whatever examples your professor is going over, write it down. And write down questions you have about it. Like, what did they do at this step? Why do we do this? How do I know when I'm done? Well, whatever questions you have about it. And then these are going to give you good questions to look over for the exams. These are probably going to be questions that are going to be on the exams, that they're going to be on the practice exams. So as you're going through the class, you're going to have a list of questions to study from. Textbooks. Math textbooks are designed a certain way, like college textbooks, but math textbooks are a really good resource. The first thing you need to know is how to access your digital textbooks. If it's digital, you need to know how to log into your website. You need to know how to go to your chapters. You need to know how to go to the glossary. But knowing how to use and access the digital textbooks can be really good. Generally, tech support can help you if you're not sure how to do it. Learning Center can help you navigate some of the websites if we're familiar with it. But your professor is going to be the biggest resource for if you need to know how to access your digital textbook. And don't wait until the third month or 6 weeks in to get help with that. If you don't know how to do it, get help with that early. Before class, you should try to read each section or whatever notes you are going on. If your professor has provided a syllabus and you know you're going over chapter 5 on a certain day, look through chapter 5. Note keywords, kind of think about them. Look through the examples and prepare yourself for what's going to go on in the class so that when it's presented, it's not 100% new and you're like in shock. You're like, I don't know what's going on. Give yourself some time to process it. So read the section. You're going to be prepped for what's coming along. When the professor goes over it, it'll make more sense. And work through the examples in each of the chapters. Instead of just reading through examples, follow it along by writing it out yourself. Don't just read like, oh, that's their step, that's the next step, that's the next step. Actually work through it as if it was a problem that you were just doing for homework. And as you do this one, write notes on why they did certain steps. Sometimes the textbook will right next to an example, they'll write why they did this step or what to look for. And if it doesn't show that, you should be writing that. Why was step one done that way? Why did we do step two? And work through that. And that's going to help you understand what you're going to do for your homework and on your exams. And when you're practicing, textbooks have the answers for like the odd numbered questions in the back of the book, almost always, especially for math. These are great questions to practice on your own or to make practice exams with. If your professor is giving you worksheets or giving you assignments that's not from the book, these are great questions. If your professor is assigning questions from a book, then you've already done a lot of these ones, and they are probably the even questions that are being assigned for homework. You can still practice the odd questions. And with math, you don't have to use just the textbook that was provided or required for the class. You can go buy another math textbook for Algebra 2 or statistics and do the odd questions from that book, and it gives you even more questions to look for. You can look in the library, see if library's got books on the topic that has solutions for practice questions. Interlibrary loan, there's the internet. And then when you're going into a math class, you need to know the fundamentals. Math concepts often and almost always build on each other. So if you're missing or you're misunderstanding fundamentals, that's going to keep you from succeeding in the class. If you're going to a statistics class and fractions are causing you problems, you're going to have problems arriving at the correct answers on your homeworks, and not because you don't understand what's being taught in statistics, but because something more fundamental is causing you to not get the correct answer. So you want to make sure you can get, those fundamentals. Whatever classes came before, brush up on that, review it. And the same thing with the chapters too. Make sure you know chapter one as you're going into chapter two. If chapter one was a struggle, chapter two is going to be a struggle as well, because it's going to build on itself. Everything you did in chapter one will be used in chapter two, almost always, especially in math, and not just used, but used all the time. So make sure you've got an understanding of the basic stuff before you're moving on to the advanced topics. And even then, as you're moving through your math class, revisit concepts that you've already gone over. So if you're on chapter 3, do some chapter 1 and 2 practice questions, because you're not done with those chapters. You're using those concepts throughout the semester. Those will be on your final exam if it's cumulative. So once you're done with chapter 1, as a unit, you're not done with it. You got to go back and study it. Same with chapter 2. If you're on chapter 5, study chapters 1 through 4. Maybe just a question from each, once a week, twice a week, something that's getting you reviewing the topics and revisiting old stuff as you're learning the new stuff. And if you're struggling with basic concepts, don't hesitate, again, to ask questions. Ask for assistance from your instructors, tutors, online resources, classmates. If you are struggling, don't struggle the whole semester. There's no reason to. Calculators. If your class allows calculator, know how to use your calculator, right? Pretty much if your class is along the calculator, you're going to probably use the calculator. So you want to make sure you can get the best out of it. Knowing how to use your calculator can save you time, especially for like a final. If you only got so much time and you're doing something the hard way because you don't know how to use the calculator properly, or you don't know what the buttons are to do something on your calculator that has to be done that way, you're not going to finish your exam or finish your exam on time, or arrive at the correct answer. And then make sure you use the same calculator for your exams as you do for homework, right? Whatever calculator is allowed for your exams, that's the one you should be using for your homeworks. So you've practiced with it, you know how it works, and you're familiar with it. And get a designated calculator. Don't just use your phone calculator, even though it's handy and we have our phones with us all the time. There are phones aren't allowed on the exam. So the calculator app that you're maybe familiar with isn't going to be allowed on the exam either. So get yourself a designated calculator, check with your professor about which ones are allowed, and then get very familiar with them. There are videos on YouTube about how to do a certain thing on your calculator. So if you're not sure, read the manual or use YouTube. And this is important as well. Know how to solve the problem without a calculator, right? The calculator is a tool to help you solve the problem. It's not going to do everything for you. So you should be able to explain step by step how to do something, right? And if it's required that you do a calculator or use the calculator for a certain step, you'll know when that step is and what to do. If the only way you know how to solve a problem is calculator does everything, but you don't know what's going on, there are going to be difficulties solving certain problems because, you know, conceptually the calculator can't solve it, but you still need to know what's going on. So know how to explain or solve the problem without a calculator, and then use the calculator to help you, not do everything for you. All right, practice regularly. This is the biggest thing. Math requires a lot of practice. All skills require practice, but math requires a lot of practice. If your professor has one unit and you've gone over 10 examples, you want to do like 100 practice questions to be confident that you can do it and to have it be automatic when you're doing the work. So work through plenty of problems and exercises. And don't procrastinate on homework. Math takes time, and sometimes it takes a lot of time. And if you're learning it and you might be struggling, it could take you hours of trying to figure it out or go through the notes and get questions correct. And if you wait to the last minute, you're not going to have enough time to finish. But practice regularly and practice all the time. All right, do lots of extra practice problems. Start with easy problems and then gradually move to more and more challenging ones. Generally, as you're working on through a textbooks, the easier problems tend to be the first problems in at the end of a chapter. And as you go through the problems, they tend to get harder and harder. So start with the easy ones and work your way through the numbers. So if there's 50 math questions at the end of your chapter, number 1's probably the easiest, and number 60 is probably the hardest. And as you're practicing and doing homework, summarize the process for solving each type of question and how to identify what process you should be using. So what I mean for that is once you're learning and once you've got an answer, go back and go, all right, what was the first step that I did? What was the second step? What was the third step? Why do I know that this is the step? Or why do I know I use this equation? Start identifying that for yourself, because then you can start picking up on future questions, exams, quizzes, tests, and be like, oh, I see this. I know what I need to do. I've already identified this. One way to study groups. Study groups are really good for a math class. Depending on the math class, you're either teaching yourself like Math 091 and 092, or you're a lot of times doing homework by yourself. And if you've struggled with math or it's not your favorite, it can be difficult to see if you're correct or to explain it or to pick it up on your own. So study groups provide motivation, emotional support, and accountability, making studying a lot less daunting and more engaging. So knowing you have a study group session scheduled can really keep you accountable because you don't want to be the person that shows up not knowing anything or having looked at anything. So, you know, there's kind of that peer pressure to keep you on task. It's going to help you motivate. It can be motivating to have others rely on your participation. They kind of want to see how you approach a problem, or maybe they have questions because they're struggling as well. And you can work through each other's notes and see what you have, and then hopefully come at an answer or learn something, or you both can know that maybe you need a third person or go to the professor. But it also helps you reduce procrastination. If you have a time scheduled to meet with other people, you're not going to procrastinate the time. as easily. You know, collectively, you're all not going to go, let's do tomorrow all the time. Uh, you're going to have like, you're all going to kind of meet. And then if one person can't go, the group is still there. So there's still accountability. And then when you organize a study group, have a clear agenda. So what that means is when you decide on a study group, don't just show up and say, we're going to do practice problems. Decide on the topics or problems you're going to cover beforehand. Say like, we're going to do a study group and today we're going to do the practice test that was given to us. And that's your focus. Your focus is you guys are doing the practice test. You're going to go through the practice exam. That's it. It gives you direction and it gives you, you'll know when you finish. You can say, hey, I felt that was productive because we finished the practice exam and we went over it. If your study group is to study for the final, break your study sessions up by chapter. Be like, all right, today's study group, we're just doing chapter 1. Today's study group, just chapter 2, or 1 and 2, however you decide on it, but have a clear goal and work towards that one. You'll know if you've accomplished something. You won't be like, did I do enough? Because you've identified what it is you wanted to have accomplished and you've accomplished it, hopefully. So study groups involve working together with peers to understand math concepts. The way each person thinks about math is different and a lot of times unique, or the approach can be, but then there's also a lot of similarities in how we approach math. And so when you try to communicate how you're approaching a problem, if you're kind of struggling to communicate it, someone else might be struggling to communicate as well, or they can, you know, have a clear understanding of a certain topic and then explain how they understand it. And maybe you can take that and it helps you communicate or understand it as well. Uh, Everyone's got different backgrounds, so different analogies can be helpful, or maybe they've got a different way of doing it. Maybe they, different words, but the different perspectives on it can help you kind of like understand what's going on or help you communicate better with it. Explaining math to others in the group is really good because you can tell if you understand it or not based on how well you can kind of explain it to the others in your group. If you're asked to explain a concept or the steps to solve something, and someone is relying on you for that information, you're going to want to make sure you know it. But two, if they're kind of struggling to get even the basics of it while you're explaining it, then perhaps you don't know it as well as you should or as well as you could. And then other times, if you know a concept really well and you can explain it, it seems very evident because someone can come out and go, wow, that was really easy, or you made it really easy for me to understand that. And it's great review. One of the reasons why the tutors are really good at what they do is because we go over the topics all the time. And so we explain it to others. We review concepts all the time. And so part of the job as tutors, doing exactly what we say for all these study groups. We review old stuff. We get together and explain how we do certain stuff better for tutoring. And that was it. All right. And when you're studying, study groups can have a lot of different ways of doing it. You can just sit down and kind of do questions and then ask each other for help. But one way I like to study for math in a group is problems from a hat. So what we do is we create a list of problems to solve. It can be 20 questions, 30 questions. It can be just the practice test or questions we've put together from like the semester, all the examples. We put them on sheets of paper and we mix them in a container, a hat. And so what we do is one student grabs a problem from the hat and then works on it on a whiteboard, a chalkboard, while explaining how to solve the problem to other students. And so they're up front, they're explaining it, so they have to think about it. So it's good review for them. They're trying to teach it, so they have to think about like what to look for or why it's a certain way. And then the people watching, the audience, the other study group members, are assessing. They're making sure it's correct. If they're not sure, they're learning from it. And then they can check for mistakes or if you got it. And then the presenter can ask for help if they're stuck. So let's say they get to a point and they're like, and then that's all they can get to, and they haven't finished the question. They can ask for help. The other group members can chime in. They can give hints depending on what you've agreed on. And then so that way everybody's still learning or reviewing. And then the audience, the other group members can ask clarifying questions. If maybe you're not being clear, they can ask something to help you be clear, or you're maybe missing something, but they can ask questions to help keep you on track as well. And then alternatively, we've done this at times where every student can grab a problem and work on it. And then once all students have finished their problem, they kind of take turns just presenting the problem and the solution. So this way, you can all kind of do a problem at the same time and then kind of just present it and go over it without having to like solve it in front of them. Study aids. All right. So flashcards. Make flashcards for important formulas, theorems, and definitions. Flashcards are really good if you have to memorize something. If you have to memorize a formula, like the Pythagorean theorem, the formula for that, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. If you have to do definitions, what is a hypotenuse? What is the standard deviation? What is the equation for the mean? Or theorems, what is the central limit theorem? Or what is the fundamental theorem of arithmetic? Whatever theorem you're working on. If you have to memorize something, flashcards are really, really helpful. All right. Flashcards are quick. They can be done 5 to 10 minutes at a session. It's review. It's to help you memorize things. It doesn't give you a deep understanding of the topics, and it doesn't tell you how to solve something, and it won't tell you the steps to do something. But what they will do is make sure that when you are looking at your notes and you are looking at formulas, or you need to use formulas, that you know them. So you're not struggling with definitions or the words presented in word problems. You know them. You want to make sure that when you're doing flashcards, you want to study them in a distraction-free environment. So flashcards, not in front of a TV. Because then you're kind of splitting your attention, and that's not an effective way of studying. All right, other study aids for math. Summary sheets or cheat sheet for quick reference. 1 page with all the equations you need. Write them out. Getting that hand-eye coordination and memorization of you actively writing it is very helpful. Having them all collected on 1 piece of paper is helpful. 1, because you've gone and reviewed all the equations, you've collected them, so you've seen them and reviewed them and referenced them. But 2, by having them all on like a quick reference sheet, it's going to save you time looking through notebooks, looking through textbooks, because you're not looking for, oh, what was the equation for this? And then spending 5, maybe, or maybe even 10 minutes if you can't find where it was in the notebook. And that's kind of just time being wasted, right? And that could be used for solving a question or 2 questions, going through flashcards again. So you want to make sure that you're using the time efficiently and then making a cheat sheet. One way to do this is throughout the semester, have a sheet of paper or a spot in your notebook where every time you come up to a new equation that you're using or expected to memorize, write it out on that 1 section. And so that way, as you're going through the semester, you're building up that cheat sheet as you need it, instead of having to go back and search through every page of your notebook trying to find the important ones. You've built it the whole time. And then create a checklist of topics and mark them off as you feel confident you understand them. So a chapter in your book might have like 10 topics you're going over, right? And so what I do, is I list all the topics that we've gone over, and I do some practice questions from each topic. And if I feel I've got a section down, I will cross that off. And I keep, you keep going until you've crossed all of them off. And once you've got all of them crossed off, you should be pretty well set for an exam, because those are all the sections and you've done practice questions from each section. But make a list of things that you're expected to know or have gone over, and then that can kind of guide you on like what you should be doing. And then a big one is creating your own practice tests or quizzes that look like an upcoming assessment. If you know you've got a 20 question multiple choice test, you should be making yourself 20 question multiple choice practice tests. It's not often in math that you're going to get multiple choice, but if you do, you should make your quizzes look like it. But testing yourself is a very key strategy for learning math. Making yourself a practice test, practicing in an environment like you're testing, kind of gives you a sense of, do you know it? Can you answer the questions fast enough or thorough enough, or do you know how to even get through the whole question before your exam's coming up? Because you don't want to learn on the exam that it takes you too long to solve the questions. You want to learn that before the exam so you can study and become faster or better at the questions so you're confident for your test. But practice tests or quizzes, make those practice tests, make those quizzes, and then work on them like they are a real test. If you have a 2-hour test, set aside a time, 2 hours, and set a timer, do the test, or practice test, just like it was a real test. And you'll know how your real test will probably end up. All right, using flashcards. Not everyone knows the best way to make flashcards or how to make flashcards in general. So we'll go over that quickly. Flashcards for math on one side can be a question or a keyword. And on the other side, an answer's on the other side. So it could be like an equation that says solve for x. And then you can go down and solve for x and get an answer, and you can check it over. And those are all right, but it's best if you're trying to do like formulas. One side, it just says Pythagorean theorem. And on the back, it says a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And then it says a and b are the sides and c is the hypotenuse of a right triangle. And so that way, front and back, you got it. You can quiz yourself. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your flashcards and answer them and separate into 2 piles as you do it. If you get it correct, it goes in the correct pile. If you get it incorrect, it goes in the incorrect pile. And once you go through all your flashcards, you want to pick up the incorrect pile and repeat the process until eventually, hopefully, you have no cards in the incorrect pile. And then do it again. You want to give yourself time before you do it again. Come back to it 5 minutes later, an hour later, and do it again. The going through it, giving yourself time, and then coming back to it is going to help build up that memory. And if you have a lot of flashcards, like you're like, I went through and made flashcards of all 100 vocabulary words, then I would start by choosing 10 flashcards, 5 to 10 flashcards to begin with, and just do those. Once you're confident in those 5 to 10 flashcards, add some more flashcards, add 10 more so you have 20. And once you're good on those 20, add 10 more so you have 20. Or separate in the groups and then do it. If you have too many flashcards, you're not going to get to this flashcards often enough or cycle enough so that you can really practice it. And you can have family members or friends quiz you with the flashcards. They don't even need to know the material. They just got to be able to read or interpret what's on it. So I have friends, don't know math, at the level of the classes I'm in, but you know what? I still had them look at my flashcards. Even when I was in grad school, I just had them look at my flashcards. They look like, I think it's correct, and we would go over it. Practice exams. How do we do practice exams? So when you're doing practice exams specifically, if your professor gives you a practice exam, you should do it. If they give you practice questions, you should do it, right? To go to a test without having done a practice exam that's been provided is going to be awful. Sometimes the questions are identical. They just happen to be. Other times the questions are going to be the same process with different numbers, right? Instead of a 5, it's a 6, and it's only slightly different. Do the practice exams. And when you do the practice exam, simulate the testing conditions. Like I said, use a distraction-free area. Library's fantastic. All those little cubicles are the quiet area. Give yourself the same time limit as you would have for the real exam, and use only the tools that would be available for you. If you're allowed a calculator, use the calculator. If you're allowed a reference sheet, use a reference sheet. If you're not allowed a notebook, don't use your notes. Just take the exam as if it was a real exam. This is going to give you a benchmark of where you're at for that exam and what you need to be studying. And it gets you used to that environment, so it's not like, shock when you're first there. All right, and then score your practice exam. Give yourself a grade on it. What grade would I get? Would I get an A? Would I get a B minus? And then go over your mistakes with a friend, a peer that's in the class. Tutor is fantastic. The math tutors in the Learning Center will go over practice exams, and we can go over each question, what's a good way of doing something, or reaffirm something you did well. Your instructor is a good one as well. Other resources. There are a lot of online resources for studying math, right? Khan Academy, Wolfram Alpha, YouTube, lots and lots of videos on how to do different problems. And then more recently, there's generative AI such as ChatGPT that can help you through problems, though keep in mind ChatGPT and other AIs can and do make mistakes, but for math, they tend to work well. So give you an example, a list of some things. Like I said, Khan Academy, they've got videos and practice questions for different topics. All of their videos are separated by like class level or topics. So if you're taking an Algebra 2 class or a statistics class, you can just go look for statistics. Wolfram Alpha is it's a website. You can, if you want to check something, you can type in equations and maybe tell you something about it, right? This can be helpful if you want to do practice, if you want to come up with practice questions and then find what a solution is. The Organic Chemistry Tutor, I enjoy this channel. It's not just chemistry. There are plenty of resources for all different topics, math, chemistry, biology. A lot of different videos separated by topic, and they're about 5 to 10 minutes on specific topics, so you don't have to go through an hour video to find what you need. Then ChatGPT is an interesting one. I've used it while studying. Oh, here we go. Give me a second. All right, so one way this can be used is, let's say you're trying to solve a question, be like, I need to know how to solve a linear equation. And it will kind of give you step-by-steps to do it. And it provides an example of how to do it. And as long as your reading skills for math are good, you should be able to follow along, and it kind of gives you kind of a step-by-step. And you can say, can I have another example? And it'll go through another example and you should be pretty good with it. What else can we have? We can ask, can I have a practice problem? All right, and it gives you an example problem, and then you can type an answer into there. I'll type 4. All right. All right, so you can see, right, the actual answer is correct answer is 4. It's what I said, but it looks like you made an error in your calculation. It was expecting x equals 4. You see, so kind of limited, but also very useful if you want practice questions, depending on the level of math. So that's one resource. All right, so we got our campus resources. The biggest thing you should be doing is office hours. If you have questions or concerns or you're struggling with the class, go to your professor's office hours. They're listed in the syllabus, when and where. A lot of times they'll say by appointment, so email your professor. When you go to office hours, have a specific list of questions or something you need help with. Don't show up and be like, I need help. And then go and say, I need help with chapter 3. I need help with chapter 1. And show what you've done so far or where you're struggling in the class. If you just say you're struggling, they'll try their best to help, but it's so vague. They could be doing something that is helpful, but not what you need. Right. So try to articulate and have a specific need when you go to office hours. Bring the work you've done so far so the professor can look through it, give feedback. If you're stuck on a question and you can't get the right answer, if you bring the work, the professor can at least see what you're doing wrong, see what you're doing right, and where a mistake is. If you don't bring anything like that and you're saying you're stuck, the professor has nothing to go on, right? So make sure you're bringing that. Next big one, it's the Learning Center. Work with a tutor. Tutors offer one-on-one help tailored to your specific math needs and pace of learning. If you're struggling with certain things, the tutor will work with you, and then maybe they'll see that it's a different thing you're struggling with. You're not getting the correct answer. Maybe they find you're struggling with the fraction part of it, or you're doing something wrong, but they can offer you a lot of help and a lot of feedback. The tutors have a lot of experience explaining difficult and complex math concepts clearly. We kind of break them down into understandable parts. A lot of the tutors here have taught a lot of students here. We've seen a lot of the different ways students struggle and the same topics over and over again. So they've got a lot of experience helping students. A lot of the same concepts over and over again are where students trip up. And if you're struggling in math, it's probably the same concept. So they have a lot of experience doing it. And tutors can provide extra practice problems. They can review your work, offer feedback. They can look over practice exams and then offer feedback for that. They can go over how best to study math skills, which is what this workshop is about. And importantly, too, is that working with a tutor can boost your confidence. A lot of students, if they're struggling in math, having low confidence in your math skills a lot of times keeps you from wanting to work on the homework, wanting to make the next step because there's like a fear of being wrong or fear of looking bad. So having your confidence boosted, or by getting questions right or kind of understanding, can go a long ways in your math class, and then generally in hopefully your college experience as well, because you're not like dreading going to math class. Other campus resources, we got the Learning Center. That's where all the tutors are located. So Learning Center has math tutors available to work with. It is free to all students at GCC, so it doesn't cost you anything. Appointments can be in person or online through Zoom. And walk-ins are welcome. If there's a tutor available, then you can meet with a tutor. If not, you can schedule an appointment, but it's a great place to work on homework and study. You can just come in, study, don't have to work with a tutor. And the link, if you need it, will be in the PowerPoint. Star New York. The tutors on campus are only here, during the normal kind of like working hours. So Star New York is like SUNY-wide online tutoring that's offered to all the SUNY students that are involved. So it's free to all students at GCC. The appointments are online. It's kind of a first come, first serve right now, but they're implementing appointments, and it's available Sunday through Thursday, 7 p.m. to midnight. And so you got to log in at 11:30, and then that's like the latest they'll let people start logging in for it. This is tutoring that's offered when the Learning Center is not open. So if you're working or you can't come to the Learning Center, or you need extra help on like a time where the Learning Center is not open, Star New York's a great resource for that. 7 p.m. to midnight, 5 hours, 5 days a week is fantastic. And I have a link here in the PowerPoint, starnewyork.org. The GCC library. GCC library has a lot of math books covering all different topics of math. I read those books. I've looked at their collection. There's a lot of different books, a lot of good stuff. If you're looking for a specific book or specific topic, ask a librarian. They'll help you go through it. The library has quiet study spaces to go over. The library has study rooms that can be reserved for study groups with whiteboards, computer, um, closed doors, so you can really study and focus on your topic. They also have textbooks for the math classes. So if you don't have a textbook yet, and you need a part of the textbook, they have textbooks that you can use you can check out at the circulation desk and use in the library and then bring it back to them. So that resource is there as well. And again, a link to the library website. And that's it. Thank you. And stop share. And